Hello, and welcome to the No and Iron podcast. With me, I have Frankie McCrea from Menstruation Matters, which used to be known as Homeless Period Belfast. So, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and Menstruation Matters?
Yes, well, I think the main part of me is Menstruation Matters, is the reason why I got involved. So I am currently a student. I'm studying Queen's at the moment, but I suffer from endometriosis and adenomyosis. And back whenever I think this is GCSE years, I remember looking at myself in my period and how I was barely able to manage, even with all of the luxuries of hot running water and a change of clothes that I had. And I thought, how could anyone that doesn't have this, that's living rough on the street or even just unable to heat their homes, be able to support themselves and have a comfortable, dignified period? So I then went out and looked for an organisation that was tackling that, and I found who were at the time Homeless Period, and immediately got involved and kind of ran head first straight into it. And at the time I didn't know I had endometriosis. It was actually through being in those spaces, at period packs and parties, and discussing that, oh wait, your period's actually not normal. This isn't just part of, growing up. That there was actually something wrong there, that I should go out and advocate for myself. And it was through those conversations that I really learned how to find my own voice and tell the doctor, look, no, I think that, something's wrong here. And that's kind of what has all led me to this point. Menstruation Matters as a whole for me is opening those conversations and breaking down that stigma and taboo, which we've always been about.
And how much of a difference has that made to your life?
Honestly, an immeasurable amount. I not only from the confidence and being able to discuss periods. I went to an all girls Catholic school. That wasn't really a thing that you talked about. If you did, it was in a really humorous way. You were making jokes about it. Even the fact that I'm able to sit in a doctor's office and, really discuss with them really quite openly things about my body. It's really been immeasurable. And I can safely say I would never have gotten any sort of diagnosis, any sort of treatment, anything other than the basic, go on the pill and we'll see what happens whenever you try to have kids. If it wasn't for the support of not only, the entire team, but also everyone that's ever been involved and really opened those conversations and allowed us to have that space.
And I know of schools who don't have the best education. What sort of jokes and myths were you sort of hearing?
Oh, well, we barely ever said the word period. There was always a code word. I feel like that's kind of quite common across everywhere. Was always, oh, look, my Aunt Flo's over visiting and things like that. Or I'm riding the crimson wave, as you often hear. It was always kind of guised under humor. And then whenever we were because it was all girls, and then we had a sister school, brother school, pardon the pun. We had boys come in sixth form, and it was always like, oh, and are you on your period? She's in mood, she's on her period. It was all of your typical stigma, taboo, kind of boring now whenever you think about it. It's like, oh my goodness, this again. None of it was helpful. Whenever you were having a conversation about periods, it was always in a kind of almost damaging light. It was never positive. It was never, discussing anything productive.
And what impact, what consequences do you think this has to, say, people going into uni?
Oh, I know people going into uni. I study a bioscience degree. We learn a lot about bodies and what bodies produce and what they do. And yet I still often have girls come up to me whispering, asking if I have a pad or tampon, or afraid to come up and ask. I think, stigma sticks. It doesn't go away even whenever you grow up, unless there's something there to intentionally tackle it and discuss it and kind of break that down, which not everyone has had. A lot of people might come from rural backgrounds, come from completely different backgrounds than me, might not have had the opportunity or known who Homeless Period, now Menstruation Matters are, or any of the conversations that we often have. So you definitely see quite a significant difference. I'm not afraid to hold my pad or a tampon while I'm walking to the bathroom. It used to be like the walk of shame for me. I used to hide it up my sleeve or anywhere. And if I heard it bristling, I would be so embarrassed. But now I don't. It's a stride of pride. I really take it like go, because who cares? But you definitely see that, not all of your peers are kind of in the same mindset and haven't had the same experiences. So while slowly we're trying to unearth all that and get all that out in the open, it's a slow process, and you do see it quite significantly through upbringings and different generations as well.
Yeah, I know in Ulster, like if we go to say the spa on campus, if we buy pads, they put it into like this brown bag as if it's something to be ashamed of. And I sort of noticed that a lot of people my age were like, why are they putting it into bags? Like, it doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
because a lot of people my age don't really care. So do you think it's more about the adult, like the older generation, that would maybe think there's a stigma, and then by doing that, it actually creates a stigma?
I absolutely think there's a massive, massive part of that. Definitely, I agree with you there. But I've also noticed that, some old shit sticks. Some younger people hear things trickle down, and that really, really, really holds on to them and kind of has them in almost a bit of a grip of, oh, well, my dad says I should never talk about this. I would say I came from quite a progressive household. We talked about, my period because we had no other bloody choice. Yet it was still put on the calendar as like I was in the club or something, because we didn't want to discuss it in front of my brother. I didn't want those questions. So some things still permeate, definitely. But I think the fact that, people are questioning, why are you putting that in the brown bag? Why are you hiding that away? It doesn't really matter. Oh, those things are definitely, I think it's nothing but a good sign. It's nothing but a green flag. That we're moving forward. We're tackling all of those issues, and I think we'll just be better for it in the end.
And I know a while back you managed to campaign for a period act, which meant like free pads in like schools and public buildings. How's that been in reality?
Well, even the fact that you said a while back, I think kind of shows the really harrowing reality of the fact that we have a collapsed government, and that act hasn't been put into place at all because of it. We are still filling the gaps there. We're still having to provide period products through donations instead of government doing it through their funding, because the funding's not going anywhere. The funding's sitting there. And really, it's quite frustrating. It really does show that we can do very, very little. With regards to the act itself, we have to say it was monumental. We don't joke when we say it made bloody history. The fact that something like that went through was completely, had cross-party support. It was really quite significant, and yet here we are. It's like we had that peak and that kind of hope, and then here we are still having to fill the void and, where the government should have taken place. So yeah, if we could do anything, it would be give Stormont a little bit of a kick and get those laws that they passed through actually rolling out. But on top of that, really it would be the kind of the discussions that then came out after that, after the bill came, that was so empowering and so helpful. And yeah, we kind of hope for more of that and less of the stagnant like you've got a bill but it's not going anywhere kind of work. Yeah.
And if you were to say something, so say if the political parties, all of them, were sitting in front of you, what would you say to them?
Periods aren't going to wait for Stormont. Periods aren't going to wait for you to get in your seats and to do your work. It's, this is an issue that's going to happen. Period poverty is still going to exist, whether you want to, one, acknowledge it, or two, work to help kind of, make any sort of ease for it. We always said, during COVID, periods don't stop for pandemics. Periods don't stop for anything. And the fact that government are looking at small grassroots organisations that are relying on donations and volunteer time and energy and fuel to kind of fill in the places in society where they don't really want to bother to touch. It's really quite frustrating, and honestly, shame on them for that.
And there's a lot of people that might know what menstruation matter is, and I know you run empowerment classes. How important is it to get the message across in relation to destigmatizing periods?
Oh, it's massive. It is, I think it's the core stone of everything that we are aiming for. That destigmatization gets people talking about periods. It gets people talking about, changes in their cycle that might not be right. You can identify different abnormalities and things, and have, similar stories to myself where I wouldn't have known things, about my body that weren't right.
And what would you say to those people who sort of do still feel a bit of a stigma around their period?
It's understandable. I mean, I know myself, still sometimes whenever I'm in certain situations, say in the workplace, I feel that kind of blockade first before I feel anything. That, oh, maybe you shouldn't discuss this in front of this particular group of people. But then, I kind of have to self-talk myself and go, look, we're all human. So it's completely understandable, but also, let's shake it up. Why not take care of yourself for once instead of giving in to taboo and stigma?
And do you think the cost of living crisis has made the sort of period poverty like more of a crisis?
Absolutely. COVID was our kind of first big indicator. We had always saw a demand for, period products, period packs. There always was. It was always there, and we knew that. But whenever COVID hit, and things like food larders, etc., it all closed down or shut down temporarily, or were only delivering, and we all kind of had to adapt to that. We really saw demand, especially from individuals that weren't able to get to, say, our beneficiaries or larger organisations that we also help feed into. It was insane. It was overwhelming. Thinking back to it, I'm almost starting to get into a sweat here. It was really significant. It was really, really strange. But then further to that, look at the cost of living crisis. That's this new peak that we're seeing. If people can't afford to heat their homes and feed themselves, or just take care of themselves in every week other than their period, how can we expect them to put money into buying pads and tampons instead of instead of going out to social events or things like that? We're consistently just seeing it get worse and worse and worse, and yet there's no government to put any action in, which is kind of the most frustrating part of it all. So definitely the cost of living crisis has had such a significant impact on the volume of work that we are asked to do.
And since Menstruation Matters relies on a lot of donations, do you think this will be enough in the long term, or do you think there's only a certain amount of time before you would actually need the government to intervene to help?
We have never wanted to have to exist any longer than maybe a year, never mind coming up, 7 or 8. It's, it was never enough that we had to exist. The government should have been filling these voids regardless. It shouldn't have taken a group of volunteers to turn around and go, wake up, mate, this is a problem. It really shouldn't have gotten to this point at all. So yeah, I think we're actually past that point. While we're looking at a cost of living crisis, people are going to donate less. People aren't going to be as aware of other people when they're trying to take care of themselves. So we're definitely well past our point of, this should have been tackled a very, very long time ago, and it shouldn't have had to be done by a small grassroots volunteer-led organisation. This is, taking care of people and humans in your constituents. They should have been taken care of by the government a very long time ago.
And is there anything else you would like to add?
Just get out there, get talking about your periods. If you don't have a period, still talk about them. They're bloody cool. They're actually really quite interesting. If you have a partner, a best friend, anyone, ask them about the period, ask how you can support them more, and also get out there and support your local food banks and organisations that are helping provide period products to those in need. Not just us, your local food banks, your women's shelters, etc. Get out there and just, really get talking about your periods and supporting those organisations in any way that you can.
Well, thank you for coming on to the episode. That's all the time we have, so stay tuned and we'll talk later.